I'm Jennifer Shinkai, host of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai, a podcast filled with heart-to-heart, long-form conversation between me, an executive coach based here in Tokyo, and my guests, a diverse group of people finding their sense of Ikigai in a host of different ways that are much more nuanced and expansive than a simple and kind of boring four-part Venn diagram. Before we dive into the episode, please do like and subscribe so that you don't miss our next video. And if you want to get in touch with me about coaching for yourself or for your organization, feel free to drop me a DM. Let me know what you think of today's episodes in the comments. Can't wait to hear your takeaways. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai. This is season 4, episode 2, and we're recording on a very sultry day before a typhoon here in Tokyo. And our guest today, Dr. Greg Story, has just let me know that his air conditioner has decided after a very hard summer to give up the ghost and to take a little rest today. But that doesn't let Greg take a rest from always looking absolutely immaculate. For those of you who don't know Dr. Story, he's a well-known man around town. At every networking event, you can see his kind smile and his warm handshake. He's been a really big supporter, I feel, of me, like in the background. And every time I see Greg, I feel like here's someone who's very generous with his advice, with his wisdom, and just seems to have this great sense of Ikigai. And we caught up a couple, what was it? Was it the TAC event?
Yeah.
The James Bond?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, it was.
And I hadn't seen you for ages. And we thought, you should be on my podcast. And then we did the I Am Remarkable session. And I put out a call, and then you made a great follow-up. And that's why we finally, after knowing each other, I think, for almost 2 decades. So Dr. Story has been in Japan for 40 years. As you could tell from the doctor, it's not a medical one. He has a PhD, which we might get to talk a little bit about his experience with that. But he's had a host of different roles. And I think I met you when you were in your role at Shinsei in banking. Yeah. And always just very, as I said, like very generous with knowledge and learning. And so I really wanted to find out more about the man behind the amazing 3-piece suits and about what Ikigai means to you. And so that's why I've invited you here today. So thanks so much, Greg, for coming.
Well, it's great to be on the podcast. I see you've had some amazing and remarkable guests, so I'm honored to be incorporated as one of them.
Wonderful. And just before we started, this was like the classic of Greg. He's like, can I just give you some feedback, some advice on your positioning in the frame? So otherwise, if Greg hadn't been here, I would have been like down here on the screen. So when you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. You can also be able to see all of my face. Thank you very much for that. So we have a couple of different topics I want to talk about today. When we had our catch up, we were thinking about different experiences in your life that had given you a sense of Ikigai, or like what your life's meaning is, or why you're here, what it means to have a meaningful life. And there was a very powerful story that you shared about a psychometric assessment that we've had. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the new awareness that you got when you sat down after the psychometric assessment. But perhaps you could set up the story, why you were taking it, and then what happened next.
Yeah, I was the Consul General for Australia, Senior Trade Commissioner in Osaka, and I was sent back to Sydney for about 7 months as a comment. And my colleague, who was the head of Korea for Austrade, was also down there. And he was leaving the government and joining Macquarie Bank. And as part of the process, he said he went through this amazing psychometric test. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. I've never done a psychometric test before. And maybe if I ever leave Austrade and I want to get a job back in the private sector, I should probably know what that's about. So I signed myself up for one, and I did it. And I thought they'd just send me the results, like these results. I was checking it out myself. And said, no. You need someone to take you through the results. I was a psychoanalyst, I suppose. And I said, okay. So typical psychoanalyst, as soon as we get into the meeting, psychometric test results are out the window, and he's got me on the couch talking about my childhood and all this sort of stuff. And, I had a fair bit of, I guess, resentment, or he thought anger about my father, because my father was a very heavy gambler. We never had any money. He's a big smoker, big drinker. And this must have come out in the chat. And then I was talking about, I had this drive, and the drive is driven by fear. And the fear was that I would be living in a cardboard box, that I wouldn't be successful. And that's why I had to push so hard and drive myself so hard. And then he just stopped me in my tracks completely, just stopped me in my tracks. And he said, well, that's interesting, Greg. I wonder why you feel like that, because from, external perspective, you look successful. You have a PhD in, Japanese politics and mass relations. At that stage, I was a fifth dan in Shitoru Karate. You've got a big job as a consul general, senior trade commissioner, running the Osaka office in Japan. You've got a lot going for you. Why are you living out of your fear of being in a cardboard box? Why aren't you living out of your potential? I was stunned. He said that, and I thought about that afterwards, and I thought, he's right. He's absolutely right. Why am I living out of my fear? Why can't I live out of my potential? And I just pivoted on the spot. Immediately, my brain just went, okay, boom, changed the perspective. And that was a real turning point in thinking about what I could do, because the cardboard box fear, failure, driving me was one thing I'd been going for a long, long time in my life. And that just switched gears for me. And I think for the better, actually. So that was a big turning point about Ikigai, that life force that we were talking about in the pre-discussion. I think my life force then moved from a negative, fear-based, to a very positive, potentiality, capability-based, which I think is a much better place to be. So he did a big favor for me in just pointing that out, because no one else had ever pointed that out to me. Maybe no one else had sort of, the chance to put me on the couch either. So maybe that was why.
Right. Well, so one is like the willingness to be open to, have your eyes opened and look in the mirror, or have whatever metaphor you want to use. But then the other is sometimes the messages just need to come to us at the right time as well. And obviously that was the time that you were ready to hear it, but maybe it was the first time as well. And I just wonder practically, I have a lot of clients in coaching who are, and I'm sure in Dale Carnegie and different training programs, people get it here. Like, yeah, I don't want to live out of my fear, the cardboard box. Yes, I want to live from my potential. And they sort of, they understand it, but they don't feel it. So I'm wondering, maybe it's difficult to recall specific incidences, but did you ever catch yourself like going back into that fear? And then how did you shift yourself back into possibility?
No, I've never gone back. I think for someone like me, I'm very, very disciplined. And so when I have a mindset shift like that, it's a shift. It's not a wobble, it's a total shift. And how I kept going with it was also around about that time, someone I knew in Tokyo had just done the 7 Habits Stephen Covey course in Tokyo. He was actually in the first class they ever ran in Japan in English in Tokyo. And he said it was very good. So I signed myself up for the second one. And that was in English, and I attended that in Tokyo. And part of the Stephen 7 Habits idea was a lot about self-control and self-development. And they also had, with Franklin Covey, this sort of organizer system. And I'd been using an organizer prior to that just to keep track of everything. But this was a little bit of a better system. And so that helped me to control my days around my aspirations, my vision for myself, and then drive that down to a daily, hourly routine. Because you can have hopes and desires. It's quite good to have those things, but they can be rather ephemeral, vague, doesn't actually translate into anything as an outcome. But this wasn't just a to-do list. It was actually, well, who are you? This is the Covey idea, right? Who are you? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? And you go through all of that goal setting first, and then you work back into your day that'll get you to those goals. So you I have, actually, I've got it here with me. I happen to have it on my
Oh,
desk here.
the prop.
The
Yeah.
size of this, you can
Like
see the
this,
size
everyone.
of this thing. It's a beauty. It's a big one. But
Yeah.
that has got uh, all of my goals, and you have goals as a father, as a husband, as a company head, as an investor, as a student. It's a number. We have roles, a number of roles in our lives, not just business. So that was a Covey idea. Take the different roles you have, attach goals to all those roles, attach things you want to do to achieve those goals. So I got in the habit through the system of reflecting on all those goals every day. Why am I here? What do I want to do? And then from that macro, then go to a to-do list and just write them all down. Then look at what's going on with my business and things I didn't get done yesterday, bring those across. And so nothing ever gets lost. And then after you get them all down, put them into a priority list. And this is very, very key. Having a list is great, but if it's not prioritized, the chances of getting everything done goes out the window. So that intentional love.
Guilty as I listen to it. So go on.
But I can tell you right now, the days that for whatever reason, something happens in the morning, I don't get to do the list, I don't get to do the prioritization, and the days I do, from a activity viewpoint, are like universes apart. It's just
Right.
scarily different. When you do it, you don't do it, you realize, wow, if you don't do it, you're wasting your time here. So I think I had the discipline from my martial arts background, and my determination, which I then got a tool set and a concept, which is a very good one. I mean, Covey's a rival for Dale Carnegie, but I still don't mind, paying kudos to what Stephen Covey did, because I think he made a really big contribution. And it helped me to become better organized around taking the macro goals, life goals, not just work goals, life goals, and then translating them into daily output. And I think that's helped me to keep going with that positivity, live out of my potential, and all of those sorts of things. I mean, I'm not an affirmations guy particularly, but there are affirmations in those daily things that I look at before I set my goals for the day, which I find very helpful too.
Right. And it's about like I love what you said about like who do I want to be, like as a father, as a
Mm.
partner, as a business person, like each of those has a different way of kind of showing up. And then yeah, breaking it down to those steps. Yeah,
Well, it's always
definitely.
shocking if you've ever done, I'm sure you have, Jennifer, in your business, you've done the wheel of life, okay?
Yeah, of
In
course.
training, we do this too. We have a wheel of life, and then people have different things in their life, not just work. Work is one segment.
Yeah.
There's health and family and friends and all this. When you actually do the radar on where are you on the wheel, it's all skewing to work. You realize, well, I'm not having a holistic approach here. I'm not living my full self here. I'm only concentrating on one part of my life, and I'm neglecting other parts. My radar is all over the place in one direction, and I'm not balanced. It's always a shock when you do that and you look at it and go, oh, okay, I've got to reset things here and get that balance. I think the Covey start with the goals, the vision, goals, and work back was a good idea. That I think the wheel of life is sort of incorporated into that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And that's, why the sort of Western interpretation of Ikigai about, the Venn diagram is such nonsense because well, it's maybe great for like what's your career purpose, but not everything can be paid, right? And not everything does the world really need. Like
Mm.
the world doesn't need me to enjoy my cup of tea. Or maybe the tea makers do, and maybe the cup makers do. I don't know. But does it really have that much impact? No, but it's a moment for me. It's a role for me as a proud tea drinker. I don't know what identity I'm leaning into, but like those all the different facets of self and having moments and awareness of like this is where I'm focusing, but perhaps I'm feeling this not so much as a void, but like there's a lack. And so, what would it like to focus more intentionality around that? And this is a very vague, or maybe smooth segue into another pivot point, a turning point that you shared about in our pre-call about your time in the ICU
Yeah.
in 2007. So you'd already had one big mindset shift from fear of failure to fear of possibilities. And yeah, then you had quite serious illness that shifted again. So perhaps if it's all right with you to share a little bit about that time, a difficult time of your life, and how you've processed that into how you show up today.
Yeah, confronting your own mortality is a big deal, actually. And uh, I actually had the flu.
Mm.
You catch a cold, you get the flu. So I went to the doc, my regular doctor gave me Tamiflu. So I'm taking the Tamiflu. It's all good. And that was on a Monday. And then it's not getting better. But I thought, well, it takes a time, I'll just hang in there. But it started to get worse. And then it was a Thursday night. Oh, man, I felt like somebody had shot me in the chest.
Mm.
So, but you're not getting enough oxygen to the brain, so you're not thinking right. I'm also a stubborn Aussie guy, so you don't really take good care of yourself either. That's probably
I'll be right, mate.
pop off the perch too early down there. So I didn't wake up my wife and say, honey, I've got to go to hospital now. I said, oh, I don't want to wake the family. I'll deal with it tomorrow. So it was about probably 11 o'clock the next morning before I got back to my doctor. And did the stethoscope. He says, X-ray, X-ray. Looked at the X-ray. Took one look at the X-ray. He said, you have to go into hospital right now. Rang 4 hospitals. 3 said no. Red Cross Hospital said yes. So I went there. Another X-ray. Doc said, he talked to me in Japanese. He said, well, you have to understand, you are seriously ill. Okay. But he said, the type of pneumonia you have, not the flu now, it's become pneumonia, is not an exotic type of pneumonia. It's a very typical type. We have a lot of experience on how to treat it. So don't worry. So straight into the ICU, which I'd never been in an ICU before. I did not expect. So I sit on the bed and they wheel you into this room. It's a huge room. There's only one bed, mine, but there's all this equipment. And then I'm sort of sitting there with the oxygen, and then suddenly it's like a movie. The door bursts open. Here comes George Clooney and a whole bunch of medicos, in the white coats and other things all over me, monitors and whatever. And that was the Friday night, and they're pumping me full of all these drugs. And when they took the X-ray, 3/4 of my lungs were in fluid. Right, that's why I had the pains in the chest. I wasn't getting enough oxygen, and I was like straining the sinews in my chest actually with the lungs. And then Saturday morning, doctor came back with a little trolley thing with an X-ray, put it on me, took an X-ray. Now it had gone from 2/3 to 3/4. I went, oh, this is bad.
Not getting better. It's the wrong direction.
39-degree temperature. I'm on the mask, getting the oxygen. I'm semi-delirious because, you can't breathe enough. But I thought, oh, I had a soundtrack in my head, one of Bob Dylan's songs about "Mama, take the badge off of me," I think I'm going to die here type of thing, playing. And I thought, wow, maybe this could be it. I'm not getting better here. They're filling me full of the drugs, but I'm not getting better. And then the next morning, the Sunday morning, came back with a little trolley, puts the thing on me again. It's gone down to 2/3. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. But it changed my attitude around money. It changed my attitude around ambition in work, to think more about family and what's important in my life, and to reset myself. And I think that was good. That was a very good thing for me to do that, because I was incredibly ambitious, incredibly pushing hard, very competitive, driving myself again for my potential this time.
Yeah.
But that drive was still there. And I think I got off the sort of, the sort of, the treadmill, basically. Right. Think about what's more important. So I think family became a lot more important to me. It was always important, but it had become much more. My son was only about 6 years of age, so that was again a big factor. I wanted to be around for him, and so that was a big turning point too, actually.
And then I really sounds like I was going to make light of it. Then I was like, so did that all go into the journal? But I often they say like there was this, I had an epiphany, but sometimes maybe epiphanies don't, but sometimes awarenesses get like left like in the training room or in the coaching session. But
No, I didn't have
yeah,
an input.
it's what was definitely.
I had my goals set and everything. It helped me to go back and relook at that and change some things and to alter some priorities I had previously to be a little bit more holistic around my whole life and
Right.
who I am and what I want about friends and family and these types of things. You know, you talked before very kindly about I was, generous and, I'm warm with people. And I think a lot of that is probably coming back to realizing that we are mortal, that there are lots of people in life carrying a heavy load.
Yeah.
And, some people who are very successful can be rather snobby and can be rather short with people who are maybe not as successful or as well educated as they are, and be too demanding or be rude or whatever. I think that humbled me also to think about other people in a different way. I think I became a better person
Mm,
on that, and I made a vow to myself to not be rude to anybody. If people were not treating me well in any particular service sector or whatever, or in business, or staff or whoever it might be, to be more flexible, be more, I'm going to say Buddhist in a sort of generic sense of being more open to accepting how people as they are. I think I made a better version of myself actually after that, to be honest.
yeah. So I think when we were having our planning meeting, you said like, what am I going to do with this life? Right?
Mm.
Something like that. And it sounds like you put some big shifts into, yeah, how you approach others and how you think about your life. So it feels
Mm.
very meaningful. But I hope that listeners, people watching this on YouTube, don't need to have a near-death experience to get this awareness and to just think about, what am I doing? What am I doing here? And hopefully Greg's story will be enough to make all of us think about, well, what could I readdress? What could I approach differently? How do I want to spend my
Well,
remaining day?
if you think this day, which I actually honestly I did think it was my last day.
Yeah.
I honestly thought this is my last day. And that really rocked me, and I think that experience has really changed me and changed my direction in life and in a good way. In a good way, but as you say, Jennifer, do you really want to get to the point of thinking this is your last day before you make that switch? I think that if you can do it without having that sort of extreme event happen, it's better.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, very interesting. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about a different theme. Because you also told the fascinating story because you just talked about people who have been successful. And one of the things which really surprised me when I watched Lance Lee's interview with you, and hearing about your like childhood growing up in the bush, and like you shared also about your family situation. So if people want to hear more about that, it's great. Like it's about a 1 hour interview. It's really interesting chat. So we'll link that in the show notes. But um, you described yourself that you got some quite harsh feedback from one of your classroom teachers. And that sort of shaped, yeah, you remember the story. And it sort of shaped for a while what you thought about yourself as a learner. And it's really ironic to hear this from, the head of Dale Carnegie in Japan. So I'm just wondering about like that transition from the harsh feedback that you received to, having a PhD and leading a training company. Like, how does that educational mindset shift happen for you as well?
Well, I think your background is important. My father, at 13, think about this, at 13, went out to the bush to work. He
Mm.
did school, used to run away from school. So his parents said, okay, you don't want to go to school. Hadn't even done, primary school, didn't even graduate from primary school.
Yeah.
13, you got to work. So he was sent out to the bush as a laborer to work on a sheep property. And so that's how he started his life at 13, learning how to run a sheep property, which he eventually did himself. But he didn't have education. My mother too, I think she almost got through maybe primary school, no high school at all. And so, neither of my parents were educated. So education wasn't a thing when
Mm.
I was growing up. And I remember when I was in high school, junior high school, that I had this conversation with my parents whether or not I would go to work at that point or go on to senior high school because that costs money. And when your father's a big gambler, there's no money. And I said, no, I want to go on because at least I knew that much. You at least got to graduate from high school. But I didn't have that background of education thinking what was possible. It was like the minimum. But then I managed to get through high school and I failed maths one. I got 3 out of 7, need to get 4 to pass. And I was the only subject I failed. I did okay on some of the other subjects. And I thought, well, that's, I should do something about that. So I did for a year night school to try and work on it. Failed again. Tried another year of night school. Failed again. Said, right, that's it. I give up on maths one.
Forget about maths one. Yeah.
Interim, I got myself into Queensland University of Technology, it was called that time, to do a communications degree. Dropped out. I couldn't hack it. Dropped out. And then I was working in the insurance business as a clerk, and there were these insurance exams so you could get certifications. And I've got to tell you, kudos to anybody in the insurance industry who actually does those exams and passes them. Paint drying would be electrifying compared to how boring these classes were and how boring the subject matter was. And I couldn't pass those either. So I sort of convinced myself I was hopeless and I was going nowhere. But I started karate when I left high school. And slowly but surely, that gave me the discipline. It gave me some drive and confidence. I had zero confidence, like none, absolutely no confidence in myself whatsoever. And then gradually I started to get some confidence. And I mentioned to you too that we had a change of government in Australia in 72. So we had education had been for the elite at university. You were wealthy or you're a genius. And I was neither of those. So if you weren't wealthy, weren't a genius, you go to work. That's it, point blank. And most of my classmates went to work like me. But then they brought in no tuition fee cost for the education. You had to support yourself. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe I could do that. And I was a mature age student entry. So I worked for a number of years to get the money together. And the other big thing that changed, talk about mortality before, was the government also pulled us out of Vietnam War. And that same year they pulled us out, my number would have gone into the lottery. And based on your birth date, that number comes up. You're going to the jungles of Vietnam to kill people,
Mm.
Thank God for Gough Whitlam and the Labor Party in Australia that they pulled us out of Vietnam. I didn't have to go because I know with my luck I would have gone for sure. But that changed. It gave me a chance. And so that confidence from the karate gave me the confidence to at least try university. And I did. I got in, and I remember my cousin, who was a university graduate, which is very rare in my extended family. I think he's probably one of the few. He wrote a letter of recommendation for me, which I still appreciate. And I was a mature age entry, and I got in. And it was a year-long course, but I was so ignorant. I thought I'd be failed out after a semester. I thought, I'm not going to make this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I won't last. One semester, I'll be gone. But it's actually a year-long course. And we got to the end of the year, and the head of the Modern Asians Study faculty, Professor Ho Pang Yok, who is an expert in traditional Chinese science, he called me into his office. He said, Greg, we've got your results here for the year. He said, you've done very well. I thought, really? Me? And he said, yeah, actually, you finished in the top 5% of your class. And there's about 100 people in that class. And I was stunned. Well, I just thought that was impossible. And that trigger, again, I had the confidence from the karate on one side of my life, but now I had academic confidence. And that changed things. And man, I hit those books hard for the next 12 years. I was at university doing my BA, my BA honours, my master's degree, and then finally a PhD. I was going to be a professor because I love learning. I was so hooked into it. And I was taking that path, but that was the trigger that gave me the confidence to go for it. Even though I'd failed maths one twice, I'd dropped out of communications, I'd failed the insurance exams, I was going nowhere fast. And then bang, big pivot. So I think that was a big jumping off point to, again, thinking about what's possible for me, where I thought none of that was possible. None of that was possible. So big change for me.
Mm. And it's I think the shift was, you were told you were a clock watcher as well when you were a kid, which is
Oh, yeah,
different from someone being, no, no, no.
Thank
I just wanted to clear that
you
for
for reminding
what
me,
was the
because when I
feedback?
was at primary school, I distinctly remember the teacher telling me, Story, you're a clock watcher, because I'd be glued to the clock on the
Yeah.
wall, waiting for 3 o'clock so I could get out of there,
Yeah, right.
get
And
out of here and go home. So yeah, sorry, I completely got
no, no,
diverted.
no, no. It's not a
Metaphor,
problem at
thank you.
all.
But
But
I went from that to something else, so it was
yeah,
good.
but to like go from that and then and also like, yeah, all of that failure, right? But then keep showing up. I think it's that keep showing up for stuff. Um, and also I'm hearing this, there's the reality that we're in because of, the family or the culture or whatever we're born into and what we think is possible. But there was something within you that the choices that happen, it's based on different geopolitical things, but still you went, you know what, maybe someone like me could
Mm.
try this.
Yeah,
And then like after you tried it, you got the feedback like you're actually really good at this.
in my family, very few people in my extent. I have
Yeah.
trillions of cousins. My father was 7, so there's
Wow.
trillions of cousins, and in those cousins, I think maybe I'm going to say one or two, and there's a lot of them, went to university. Everyone else went to work, and me going to work would have been normal.
Yeah.
Going to university would have been abnormal. So that was not in the heavens or the cards for me because that wasn't a normality. And so, yeah, changing uh, that script for
Yeah.
myself was a big change, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just, you know, I've seen you around like loads of different networking events and all of these things. And like, it just keeps hitting me that you would not know unless you asked.
Mm.
And so many people, it just like the topic of just bias is coming up to me, like bias and assumptions of like what, as you observe someone else, what you think you know about them, and actually don't know anything. It's like you only know the them that you can see today. But
So
what,
be
oh,
kind.
yeah,
Here's some
sorry, Dan.
advice. Be kind to everybody. It's a good philosophy in life. Don't be over expecting people. Be kind. And as I say, just imagine everyone's carrying a heavy load. And when you read about super wealthy people, I mean, the super rich, it's not like they've got no problems.
Yeah,
The kids are on drugs and, spinning out, or they're getting divorced, or they're getting ripped off, or, health issues. I mean, every single person on the planet's got some issues, but we tend to be, well, my issues are okay, but your issues aren't okay. Fly straight. Particularly in business where you're the leader and
mm,
goals to hit, targets to make, and you're being driving the team, and you're not very understanding, and you sort of go, right? Ease back a bit and just think about what's happening with those people and what's going on in their life. I think it's a better starting point.
yeah. Do you think that that's becoming more and more important in the world these days, or same as always?
I think social media, I think mobile phones are making people more isolated and self-centered,
Yeah.
and concentration spans become shorter. I think, we're being fed 1-minute reels from all these different social media platforms, which are sort of tantalizing
Mm,
and sort of semi-satisfactory because you don't get the whole movie, to get a minute version of it or something. So I don't know. I think for younger generation, it's going to be an issue around communication skills, people skills, getting out of your own self-interest and to have a broader vision of the people around you. I think that's going to be a challenge,
mm,
a real challenge. I think in the era that we grew up, we didn't have those things. There weren't those distractions. You had TV and radio.
yeah.
Whoopee. But
Four
now
channels, well,
they've
three
got
channels.
everything.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit different, I think, a little bit different. So it's going to be a challenge for them to lead others, and to be able to take themselves out of their self-absorption on their interest to then encompass what other people want to have happen in their lives. I think it'll be quite a shift needed for people to transition through, particularly managing across generations as well.
And I'm just thinking from a more holistic viewpoint as well, not only in the workplace, but that sense of there's research around Ikigai, the topic of the umbrella topic of the podcast, and like relationships and who you are in community and the roles that you play and how you matter to other people or what a difference you made to someone else. Like that interdependence of humanity is a big driver of a feeling of Ikigai. So if you're only, in a in doom scrolling, and also obviously like the way algorithms work and feeding us the bad news rather than the amazing things, right? It can be
I like
difficult to tap
being
into.
involved in Iggy is it's an organization that's been around for, since 1912 and since 63 in Japan, but it's geared up to transform people's careers and business. And I've always found I've enjoyed that. When I mentioned about karate before, when I first started karate training, like everyone else, I was a white belt, didn't know anything. And then the teacher recognized that I really loved what I was doing. And he said, "Would you like to become an instructor?" And I said, yeah, more karate, great, give it to me, anything more I can grab. And so I did the warm-up stretching, for like a year or something as a low grade. And those days were very few black belts, right? So a brown belt was a very high grade, black belt, very few of those. But gradually, as I came up through the ranks, I began to teach. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing people develop. I could have some input into seeing them develop and become the full capacity person they were able to become. And that's both mental and physical in the martial arts, right? And I think somehow that, without me knowing it, got into my blood. And I think also the idea of becoming a professor was also that helping people develop intellectually. And I think I would have been very good.
Yeah.
There was a movie with Russell Crowe in it called A Beautiful Mind. I
Yes.
think it's Princeton. They're all Princeton science undergraduates, and the professors are talking to them about, everyone in this room, scientists, are going to be the ones who make it for America in the Cold War against the Russians, and that your job is to make it, and make it happen, and we're going to win this Cold War in the sciences as a calling. And in a way, I had that sense when we were doing modern Asian studies that I had a role to help Australia integrate with Asia. The engine of the world is economically, and I had a potential role to help Australia do well there. And I had that idea in my head of giving. And I think then as a teacher, I would have been able to give. And as it turned out, in the companies I've been in and run sales roles, I've always been developing my own team members in sales capacity. And at Shinsei, I set up the Shinsei Business School, from nothing. And then we had our own internal training system, which I built, which I enjoyed that. And then I was teaching it, and I got others to be able to teach in it. And then actually got into training as a profession, not just in the inside the company, but as an actual business. So I think inside me from that very early days of, as an 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old starting to teach, inside karate has carried as a theme of giving back and helping people and the joy of helping others. I think seeing them develop, that's something so very consistent theme across my life. I can see that now looking back. It's something I enjoy. And I think that's a good thing. I think if we think about that for others, how can you be positive in someone's life? How can you help them? And I found there are certain people who are quite generous with their time with me, and I trying to do the same, because I'm quite prolific on social media, as you know, and I will have people reach out to me and they want to have a cup of coffee and they want to talk to me about something. And I always say yes. I say, yeah, I'm happy to meet. Got nothing to do with my business. I'm not looking at them as a client. But again, if I can help, then I want to try and help. I think if you've got that basic sense of trying to help people, that is a good philosophical starting point to be in the training business with.
For
just
sure,
human business with as well, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, and just a great place to be in life, right? We're humans are pro-social creatures and we need each other. So having that desire, and it's just so interesting hearing you speak then and thinking back to 6-year-old Greg watching the clock. Like, would you ever have believed that, oh, I really want to be a teacher, basically. And I remember there was a phrase that you said at the end of our planning call, and you said, like, what am I going to do with all this knowledge?
Mm.
And I feel like that the little boy growing up in the bush would be like, what? What do you mean all this knowledge? It's really
About I was on my very first educational experiences was School of the Air, where you're sitting at home with your mother, you've got a big headset thing on, and the teacher is some thousands of miles away going through lessons, so your mother sort of guiding you. I was about, what, five, I think, at that age. And then
wow.
it wasn't until I was about six, I actually went to a physical classroom, and the classroom had first row were year ones, second row were year two. It was a one-person classroom up to year seven, right, in that little tiny classroom. So from that to getting to, a PhD is just unthinkable, unthinkable.
Yeah, it's
You look
amazing.
at it from a logical point of view, how could that possibly happen?
Yeah, really fascinating to think about those things. That how am I here? How did this happen? But you are, so let's run with it. And just to look forward, there was one other conversation I wanted to touch on, maybe only briefly, but it's to do with, like, what can I do with all of those knowledge? And I was thinking about, your Ikigai going forward, and we had a very animated conversation about AI. Obviously it's affecting everyone's industry, and everyone's roles and everyone's lives. And I really liked your take on, like, what AI can do for you as a human, right?
Mm.
Not as a tool.
Yeah. Well, I think, in recent times, the mobile phone is what was a major breakthrough in communication terms. The internet, another really life-changing breakthrough. And then you think about, okay, what's the next one? And that's AI.
Yeah.
The capacity for AI to help us in every facet of our life is incredible. And I feel blessed and happy that I'm still here, able to be able to ride that AI wave, in the way that I could ride the internet wave as well in my lifetime. And to be able to translate knowledge in new ways to help more people. Like, I've got something like 1,700 podcasts I've done. I've 9 books that I've written. There's a lot of knowledge out there these days which you can get. And the AI is just going to make all of that even more and more accessible and more capable for all of us to enjoy. So I think all of us, the open door now for AI is huge, and it's moving so quickly that if we are not riding that wave, we're going to get drowned in the wave. So I'm a great swimmer, I'm a pretty good surfer. I'm not about to get drowned. I'm going to ride that wave. So, I think that's the trick. And, even you might say, well, look, you're at the end of your career, Greg. Why would you worry about it? Well, no, if you're in business, you can't not worry about it. You've got to be involved, and you've got to be a leader in working out how to apply it, how to bring people with you, how to make the most of it, and how to be across it, because it's broad already. I mean, they got to, what, 1 billion users in 2.5 years. And I think, was it Facebook got to the same thing in 13 years or something like that? I can't remember that's the exact comparison, something like that though, but it's so quick. And then there are so many platforms. It's exciting. I use it every day, a lot now, for all sorts of things. And it's changing. It's changing how we work, and it's changing how well we can work. And the problem is, we don't know where we're going with it, but you've got to be there, trying it, tasting it, learning about it, to at least be across it, to try things. And I'm listening to podcasts on it. I'm experimenting. Talk about prompt engineer. I would call myself a prompt engineer now, because I'm using prompts, and I'm developing prompts, and I'm parking these prompts and bringing them out and applying them for the things that I do, right across the board. So it's something that's going to be a dynamic, I think, escalator of our abilities and an accelerator of our abilities. So it'll escalator them up and drive them forward. So it's exciting. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's great to hear that, the passion that you have, and I appreciate something you said on our call the other day around this too, is like, what a gift it is that you also have a place where you can apply it.
Yeah.
And like being able to, when you have this passion or this knowledge, whether it's around AI or whatever, like listeners are interested in, then actually applying it, like not just keeping it in yourself, but applying it, testing it, involving other people, I think is the way to, to accelerate it and take it to the next level.
Well, I mean, just an example. How are you going to apply things? I am so fortunate to still be in business. I have my own company. I have my team. I talked to my head of marketing today. We are going to revamp our entire website, every page,
Yeah.
through AI with a particular direction in mind. All those 1,700 podcasts I talked about, they're all transcripts. We're going to rework every single one of those with a certain purpose through AI. We're going to transform what we're doing in ways that would just be unbelievably impossible in the past. Just forget about it. Just impossible. You couldn't do it. You couldn't.
Can't put the resources into it. Yeah.
But it'll be a real pivot for us. So that's exciting. And like the prompt, this morning we came up with the prompt to say, okay, here's the prompt. Now we're going to apply it. Go. And I can watch that. I can see that develop. That is very rewarding as also. You say, okay, we had an idea, a conceptual, okay, here we have the tool, we've developed the tool, okay, now let's see what happens. So that's exciting.
Right. So like having that, it's the tool that allows you to do the things you always wanted to do, but could never like have the resources or it was just like, well, how long is that going to take? Not a priority. But now we can start to bring those things to play. Awesome. Well, I'm aware that we're coming to the end of our time together today. So I'm going to leave you with two final questions. So the first one is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you about?
No, I think we had a pretty good coverage there. I mean, we had a good chat in the pre.
I wish we'd recorded. I always do. Yeah.
2 hours. But I think we covered all the high points. So I think we can cover that one off.
Great. And then as the final question, a takeaway or an insight, if our listeners can only take away one thing from our conversation today, what is it you would like them to remember and why?
I would say the importance of leading an intentional life. Now, what does that mean? You have the capacity to decide what happens in your life. Up until about early 1900s, everyone thought luck, karma, God's will were going to determine what happened to you. You could not impose any aspect of what you wanted on the future for yourself. And then the psychologists started to decide that actually, no, you could change your life through how you changed your thinking. And that's a major breakthrough around intentionality. And what I would say is there's probably a lot of people floating through their life who, like me, didn't recognize there was a capacity in them to develop their life further. And it took some triggers for me to see that and get that confidence to try. But if you decide, well, I'm going to decide to have an intentional life. Well, what do I want in my life? First of all, you define what is the thing you want to be happening in your life, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter what it is. That's not important. But you have a determination of choosing this outcome. Once you make that choice and you determine, okay, I want this to happen, then there's a whole series of things which must be in place for you to get to that point. But you've got to have the point in mind first, and then you work out what you need to get there. And then you need the discipline to do those things to get you to that point. But if you don't have the intentional life as a goal, none of that will happen, and you will lead the life that somebody else determines for you. That's not ideal, I think. So my challenge for everyone, my advice for everyone is, first of all, decide, okay, I'm going to lead an intentional life. What do I intend? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? What sort of person do I want to be? Who do I want in my life? What do I want in my life? What sort of things do I want to do in my life? Where do I want to work? What places do I want to go? What things do I want to own? All of that can be determined from your desire with a goal in mind, and then you drive towards that. And you don't drive to it from fear like I did, for a long, long time. You can actually think about, can I live out of my potentiality? And I think the intentional life and living out of your potentiality will get you there as a goal and achieving that goal. I mean, we never get to perfect goal achievement, but the journey, I think, is the key thing. So I would encourage people, who do you want to be? Define it. What life do you want to lead? Define it, and then work backwards and set the goals to get you there. If you do that, I think your life will be richer. You'll be more successful in however you frame it, whatever you frame as success, and you'll be happier.
Wonderful. That's a very clear message for people to take away. So get your journals out, start answering some of those questions and challenges that Greg has put forward to us today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Greg. It's been great to chat to you, to hear all about to hear some tiny parts of your amazing life, a couple of little spots on it. But we're going to share all of your contact details in the show notes if people have things they want to follow up, ask us. Greg mentioned he's very generous with his time, but lots and lots of so much is, as you said, loads of podcasts, loads of resources, books. Ninth book, you just said, the hard copies coming to the office. So a lot of this wisdom is already out there. So please access it. And thank you very much for sharing that knowledge and wisdom with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer. And let me just say, if I can help people, don't be shy. I'm here to help. Reach out to me. If I can help you, I am happy to help you.
Yeah. And I will say that Greg is good on his word, because I remember that time when I reached out to you and you were like the big cheese at Shinsei at the time. And I was a bit like, and you were like, yeah, sure. Come along. And then many times I've said, please, can you give me some advice? Please, can you give me some help? And, sometimes it's scheduling things, but there's never been an issue. So I would also like to follow my mentor, Greg, and to say to anyone else who's listening, if you want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to give people that time too. I think that those people who, just give other people the opportunity to share what they're going through and what they need, like, that's a great role that we could all play. Everyone has some experience that somebody would benefit from. So everyone listening too, you might think about, who might I be able to help on their journey as well?
Thank you for the chance to be on your podcast, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Greg. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening, watching today. Please do put your feedback, your insights into the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Thanks very much, Greg.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope that you found something you could take away from the episode to help you find your own Ikigai and integrate it into your daily life. And I'd love to hear exactly what resonated with you. So pop over to see me on LinkedIn or on my Facebook page. You can find the links in the show notes below. And let me know what you thought was the most important takeaway from the podcast today. And sharing is caring. So feel free to share this episode with one of your friends who you think could benefit from hearing about living a life of purpose. Looking forward to see you on the next episode of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai.